I feel like that's the most important feeling, that like not lying to yourself as in like, okay, you did your best. Because sometimes people have this regret of like, oh, I should have done better, like I should have did this and did that. But if you've like pulled through from the start and believe that you could do it and not lie to yourself, I feel like that's the most rewarding thing. Yeah.
All right, Emma, welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm very excited, Alan. This is my first time on a podcast.
Yeah, this is your first ever informal-ish interview kind of experience.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm very
So
excited.
yeah, before we dive into the questions, I just want to ask you to run us through your education journey thus far, what you've been doing so far, what you're doing right now, and where do you think you're going to be going in the near future?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. So for those of you who don't know, I finished my IGCSEs around May, June of 2023, I guess. And we were the first ever batch to graduate from Helix. And after that, I did a bit of IELTS. I also did my grade 12 matriculation exam. And then I ended up in med school, which I'm currently doing now. I'm still in first year. In the future, I think I feel like I'm continuing to be like choosing medicine. I think I'm gonna be a doctor in the near future. I hope if I make it out of 5 years of medical school.
Okay, so future doctor with us today. Very interesting conversation.
Wow.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to ask you is, for your IGCSEs, you did 9 subjects, if I'm correct,
Yes, that's correct.
and you did like ICT and ESO as well, in addition to the normal medicine subjects. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
why did you do those 2 subjects, and why did you make it like 9 subjects? I'm intrigued with that.
Ooh, okay. So nine. I didn't plan on taking 9 subjects. Actually, they say it was like 6 subjects at like minimum. You have to
Yes,
take
yes, yes,
six
yes.
subjects. So I was like, okay. And at one point, I remember I had different like career options in mind. I remember
Mm,
wanting to be an astrophysicist at
right.
one point, which didn't end up happening, by the way. Very crazy. I was 15 or 16 at the time, so I had a lot of things going on and a lot of opportunities that I wanted to pursue. Uh, but eventually, ICT, because it was a very hot topic at that time. Most of my friends were in computer science. They were talking about Python. They were being all cool and tech savvy. And I was like, okay, maybe what if I want to be a computer scientist? Who knows, right? So I took ICT, not thinking much of it, but I still like I kind of regret it, to be honest. ICT is not my thing whatsoever, and English because well, ever since I was little, I was interested in English literature. I
Yeah.
loved poem and
Mhm.
like poetry, so I was like, okay, why not both at the same time? So that's how it ended up being 9 subjects.
Yeah. So you did these extra subjects, and that gave you that freedom of if I ever wanted to change career options in the future, I could.
Yeah.
But do you think that extra stress and those extra hours of doing homework, do you think that was worth it?
Uh, um, I mean, like, I remember, like, up until the exam, I spent so much time on ICT. I spent like hours studying like past papers for it, and then in the end, I wasn't even like that good,
Yeah.
to be honest. But it was. Hmm. If I had to go back and not take ICT, I feel like I would. you know, like that took huge chunk of my time, but it's still a very fun experience. I met like friends that I couldn't have if I
Mm,
took any
mm,
other
yeah.
subject. So it was like so and so. It was fun for the experience, but bad at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that you pointed out. If you take extra subjects, you get to meet students who are quite not in your main subject area. So I think it really
Yeah.
helps with expanding your networks as well. And
Yeah.
so, what do you think are some of the most difficult things that you faced in your education journey, this far? Not just in IGCSE, but in anything that you've done.
Oh, that's a good question. I remember. I don't know if you felt it, Alan. Like I remember like feeling really burnout. Have you ever felt burnout before? Like from all the studying? or are you just a hyper like?
Burnout is, I think it's like at some point in time, like if you're a young person, you will face it because no one
Mhm.
teaches you how to avoid burnout. So I was also that person. But I think I had the kind of support to bounce back from it. So it didn't hit me that hard, I think. Yeah.
Oh, that's very sweet. Yeah, but I did have support, but I remember like when I was doing my grade 12, I remember I just finished IGCSEs and my
Mhm.
results were out. And then like the studying took a really big toll on me and I didn't want to see like any textbook. I
Yeah, yeah,
hated
yeah,
studying. I despised studying. And I was like, I'm so done. Like, why do I have to do like I set myself in that situation, by the way. I was complaining and I was whining and I was like, oh my god, I don't want to study anymore. But then like I remember texting a friend and telling him and being like, okay, I don't think I'm making out of this like pit alive. Like I'm like suffering. That went on for about like 2 or 3 weeks. And eventually, yeah, he kind of talked me out of it, and then I eventually found my strength. But I felt this kind of like impending doom that I was gonna fail like at everything. But burnout is crazy, and like if you don't have the enough support, or if you don't have a strong mindset to bounce back from it, I feel like it can take a really big toll on your education. So I feel like it's better time to time to relax and take a step back. Yeah.
yeah. I think yeah, students should have that kind of mental support from not just their peers and classmates, but also from their teachers. I think that's one thing that we should emphasize in education. And yeah, I think it's gonna be really helpful. And also when you're burnt out, I really relate to that feeling of like I just don't want to do this anymore. And
Yeah.
also the thing that I remember um that hurt me the most was like I did this to myself. Like I chose this. Why do I have to do this? But for you, like when you receive your results, I mean, like, were you proud of yourself for like putting yourself in that stressful and difficult situation? So how do you think of that?
I feel like the amount of hard work that oh, kind of golden hour happening right now. I'm
Yeah.
kind of glowing, kind of like ascending the heavens. But anyways, um, uh, but yeah, I feel like it's very rewarding because I feel like when you're a student, you know how many hours that you've put into it or not
Uh-huh.
put into it. And I remember like putting all this effort, and sometimes I feel like complaining, like, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I studying this
Yeah.
much? But eventually, when you see the end results, it's very satisfying, and I feel like it's very worth it in the end for all the trouble that you go through. And there's this moment of like relief that it's over and then that you did the best that you could. I feel like that's the most important feeling, that like not lying to yourself, and um not lying to yourself as in like, okay, you did your best. Because sometimes people have this regret of like, oh, I should have done better, like I should have did this and did
Yeah.
that. But if you've like pulled through from the start and believe that you could do it and not lie to yourself, I feel like that's the most rewarding thing. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. And yeah, I think it teaches you a lot about resilience as well. So, I mean, it seems like you're just doing an exam, but it also teaches you a lot about your own mind, and that really strengthens you, I think, for other challenges in
Yes,
life.
very true.
Yes.
Yes.
So another thing that I want to ask you is about losing time on other interests. So
Oh,
I believe that you did a lot of studying, and because of your
mm-hmm.
9 subjects, and also because you did the Burmese exams as well, if I believe.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
what are the things that you lost because you were pursuing this very ambitious academic goal? And yeah.
Ooh, okay, facing my traumas. Like I said, I feel. Ooh, I don't know if I've said this, but because well, I had to switch schools before Helix, and there were some friends that I had to let go.
Mm-hmm.
There were some like deep connections that I made that
Mm-hmm.
I unfortunately had to let go because I was trying to pursue this career simultaneously. And yeah, I feel like the friendship, and sometimes it's also because like there's a lot of time that you have to like there's a lot of chunk of time for studying that you have to allocate for yourself,
Yeah.
and there's very little time for like socials, going out with your friends, and sometimes doing things that you enjoy. I remember I just finished my IGCSEs, and there was only and I had to immediately hop right back into grade 12. While some
Yes.
people were, partying and finishing their
Mm.
IGCSEs, they were going out, they were on like trips, they were going to concerts. I was like studying my ass off, and I was like, damn, like I've mentioned, and we both felt as well, like I did this to myself.
Yes.
Nobody did this. And so it's the fear of missing out. So when I open Instagram and see friends going to concerts, I was like, oh man, I should be doing that. Like, why am I doing this right now? But yeah, it's especially the connections that I made in my previous school that I kind of like regret having to make a sacrifice for. Yeah.
Okay, so I think what's kind of gonna be useful for some students who are gonna be listening is how do you persuade yourself to get back onto the thing that you are doing instead of getting distracted by, the things that other people are doing. So how do you mentally strengthen yourself for the difficult thing?
Okay. Uh. Yeah. Like. I'm kind of speechless for a sec. Um. I like I've mentioned, I have sometimes I have major burnout, and I question whether I'm doing the right career or why I'm doing this to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, you're doing this for yourself. You're doing this for
Mm,
your family. You're doing this to put yourself in a better situation and open
mm,
yourself up to opportunities.
yes.
So if you have one goal in mind, like it's sort of this like manifesting thing that other people do, like manifest yourself in that life, and you have to
Uh-huh.
put some hard
Yes.
work into
Yes.
it. There's nothing without hard work, and sometimes it's understandable if you want a break, but I feel like there needs to be a promise that okay, the end result is gonna be worth it. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's how I pull myself out. And it's informally, it's also because of a treat I promised myself. Okay, and when I finish my IGCSEs, okay, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go like where I'm gonna buy myself a matcha after this exam. Like these things, like small pleasures that keep me going. So
Yeah, I think yeah, it was kind of a similar experience for me as well. And the
yeah.
number one thing that pushed me through was like I told myself I could do anything and everything that I wanted after this is over. And that was like the number one thing that kept me going. And another thing was that I tried to, like picture myself opening that result envelope and seeing like amazing results.
The
So
nines.
that's yeah, the
Yeah.
nines, like straight nines, that's just a very good source of motivation to keep you going. And another thing that I want to point out and is that you have to stick to your goals even if you don't feel like it. I think that's also important. People
That's
talk a
true.
lot about
That's true.
yeah motivation, but sometimes you just gotta do it if you want to get the thing. So
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah. Don't give up.
yes. But aside motivation and discipline, what kind of advice can you offer in terms of study strategies for minimizing the time that students are going to be studying whilst maximizing their retention and their mastery of the whatever thing they're learning?
Ooh. Okay. So I okay, for like managing your time before your IGCSEs is very important, because if you take a lot of subjects, even 6 subjects is like a lot for the average student. So it's important to recognize where your strengths and where your
Mm,
weaknesses are. So for me, I understood that ICT was my weakness.
yes.
So I had to spend a lot of time in ICT and spent most of the chunks for other subjects as well. It's like you have to just list out of the things that are like you're kind of weak in. So the it's important to what I'm saying is it's important to recognize your strengths and
Yes.
weaknesses,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
it's very good to work from there. For EFL, what I tell my students is that okay, which section are you weak in, right? Because in
Mm,
EFL we have different sections,
yes.
and so if you're weak in section C, try to spend a lot of time on it and try to time yourself. Like, where am I taking like so much time on? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And you can work from there. And um, yeah, I feel like yeah, and like me saying that okay, identify your strengths and weaknesses. It's very easy to say, but it's kind of hard. For the most of the time, like I didn't even know what my strengths and weaknesses are. It's all about, like I've mentioned, not lying to yourself, and recognizing this early on has helped me a lot, especially when it was near my exams. Um, yeah, and for retention, there's other methods, like like. I've heard on the internet there's like blurting method or whatever. There's
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's called blurting. Yeah,
active recall.
blurting.
Do you use those, Alan?
Blurting is just active recall without the question, so I don't think it's that different from active recall. You just write
Yeah.
stuff without having like any particular question. So I just call it active recall, not really blurting. It's
Do
just like
you
a
use
fancy.
active recall?
I think it's the number one strategy in my study toolkit.
Wow. Damn. Do you make like flashcards?
Yes, I have flashcards,
Wow.
and I'm
This guy
and
over here.
yeah,
Okay.
now that I'm teaching students, I'm also teaching students to make flashcards because I think flashcards are the number one way to find out your weak areas, and it's also the best way to improve retention. And like
Ooh.
when you said that, like you were unable to identify what areas you were weak at, I think the number one way to solve that I don't know what I'm weak at problem is to just test yourself. Like answer a bunch of questions, and where you get wrong, that's your weaknesses. And the next time you do it, just focus on that. I think that's how I do it,
True.
and that's how
That's
I'm
very.
also teaching my students.
That's a very good solution. For me, active. I make flashcards. When I'm in medical school, I had to make like flashcards. I use Anki. I don't know if anyone has heard of that, but sometimes there are also other subjects where I'm like, there's also this barrier of like making flashcards is a bit time consuming. That's the number one complaint for active
Oh
recall.
yes, yes,
Do you know that? Like,
yes, yes.
how
That's
do
very
you
common. That's very
overcome this
common.
problem, Ellen? Yeah, it takes like around like 1 hour at least. I think at least 1 hour to sit yourself down and actually identify the questions and put it on a flashcard. So how do you spend 1 hour, or how do you
Yes,
overcome like how do you make
yes.
it efficient?
But the thing that students don't see when it comes to making those flashcards is yes, they are spending an hour or two after they first learn the material, but down the line, because you're like actively recalling yourself over time, the number of flashcards that you actually have to like revise when it comes to exam season, that will like go down by a third when it comes to exam season, because you are not going to be reviewing the cards that you already know. So actually you're saving time. It's just that it's taking a lot of time initially, not later. So I think students should have that long-term vision kind of thingy when they're approaching active recall, instead of just you know emphasizing on how it takes so much at the start. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's true. For me, I was like, I was also complaining. I was like, oh man, like taking or like making flashcards takes like an hour, but in the end, that's true. What you said, Ellen. It's eventually cutting down time that you don't realize that you're cutting.
Yes.
And for if active recall doesn't work, are there any other methods they use? For me, I use Pomodoro technique. Like I don't know how to pronounce it. Pomodoro technique.
Yes,
Have you heard of
Pomodoro.
it?
I use Pomodoro however I want to use it. So like there's a the convention which is like 45 minutes of work and 5 minutes of rest thing.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
do like
true.
if my energy levels are really high, it's like 1 hour and 10-minute break. But if I'm like drowsy, it's like 30 minutes and 20 minutes break. But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Pomodoro is kind of overrated in my opinion. It's good for taking
Ooh,
breaks, but it's not really a study technique because I don't think it has anything to do with like memory and cognition.
true, true. That's very true though. But it's the last resort for me if I'm like very drowsy and don't want to study. I'm like, I'm really tired. I should go to bed. But then I'm like, okay, I put a timer on. Like, oh, Julia, you need to focus. Like 1 hour. You know, so you have 15-minute breaks. You can have a nap. So yeah, that's very interesting. Your
Yeah.
take on active recall.
Yes. And speaking of, time management, did you ever like schedule your days, or did you just wake up, go to school, come back home, study? How do you approach that scheduling or time management thing?
Oh, the latter. I'm very unorganized. I have friends who are more organized. I'm like a type B personality. I think Alan, you would be a type A. Um, so I'm very like disorganized. I don't have a timetable. I have a friend, I remember, and then he'd have Excel spreadsheets of what he's gonna study
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single day up until the exam. And I was very impressed because he's sending me files and files that's like never ending of like, oh, when he's gonna eat, when he's gonna study. I'm like,
Yeah.
dang, dude, do you do all this? And I'm like, I can't do that. So I just like, okay, I have to study this and I'm gonna finish this today, then I'm gonna do stuff tomorrow. That's how I function. I don't know about you.
Yeah,
You're very, you seem very type A.
yeah, very type A, and you made that estimation
Oh,
very correctly. But I'm
yes.
to justify for my peers who are type A. I think it actually reduces the stress for us because we have this piece of paper. We can see everything that we're gonna be doing. There's nothing unexpected coming up. So I think it actually reduces the stress for us instead of making it lower.
I know, I know. Yes, that's very true. I should start making timetables, but I've every time I've tried, I just kind of gave up. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
don't do that. Don't do it like me. Be like Alan.
Well, I mean, some people get away with being disorganized, and I don't think it's like an issue. If you enjoy living your life that way, I think you should live it. And if
Yeah,
you find calendars stressful, just don't have calendars, and 99% of your stress is gone.
words to live by. Yes.
Yes. And you call yourself disorganized, but do you call yourself hardworking or do you call yourself not hardworking?
Hardworking as I see it, it's constantly being like motivated and having all the strength, like the energy to constantly like do it day by day. But sometimes I
Mm-hmm.
get low on energy, so I don't know if I fit into the hardworking criteria. Sometimes I'll need a little break, like I said, and but I can be very hardworking when I need to be. When I have a goal, I'm very kind of, some people say like stubborn. When I have a goal, I can't like physically let go of it. Like if I want something, I have to have it. I feel like that's kind of like the competitive side of me,
Mm-hmm.
but hardworking, like not always, maybe sometimes. So that's my definition of myself, I guess. What about you, Alan? Are you hardworking? I'm sure this
Um,
guy is. I'm sure
well,
this guy is.
I wouldn't call myself hardworking, but I try to show up every day. Like, do you like show up every day? And when I say show up, I just mean like you do whatever you need to do, like studying or working. Like, do you try to commit to your goal every single day, or do you just take days off whenever you want to?
Yeah, I definitely stick to the goal. When I was near, when it was like exam season, I always tell myself to study every single day, and
Mm-hmm.
I did for the entirety of 18 months of IGCSEs, and it's the
Mm,
same goes for my grade 12, because I know that if I, even if it's like 1 hour or 2 hour, I try, even if it's like 45 minutes, studying is still studying, so I
yes.
try to stick to that routine, and I try to stick to the routine.
Yes, that's actually very important because even if you don't call yourself a hardworking person, if you do the thing like even for like 45 minutes every single day, you can actually like move towards your goal one step at a time. I think that's quite underrated. Uh, so
True.
yeah, stick to your routine. I think it's very important.
Yes, have that resilience.
And you said you were competitive, and that competitiveness, the competitive part of you, drives you to reach your goal no matter how hard it is. So what else do you think is your primary motivation factors apart from your competitiveness?
Ooh. um Primary motivation factors, um it's, I have this like fear of like getting anything below a grade that I set myself. Like, for
Oh,
example, if I want like, no, this is gonna make me sad. But if I want, for example, in middle school, I was a very hardworking. Yeah, I was hardworking then. Right? I don't know if I'm now, but if I want like an A, I will do anything. I mean, anything to get an A, and that's my like motivation. It's just this it's just a fear. It's this trauma of having like,
yes,
I don't know, a fear of failure, I guess,
yes,
that I have, and that's also like a primary motive. I know that nothing's gonna happen if I get a B, hypothetically, or a C, um but it's just this goal that I want to meet for myself, and yeah, having goals, I guess.
yeah.
I kind of lost track of the question.
That's a very good. I think it's very value. It's a very valid argument because I've read somewhere that humans are more motivated by negative things than by positive things. So
Wow.
you're more likely to be driven by losing something rather than be tempted by gaining something. And for me, that's also a
Ooh.
big part of my motivation system. and I try to tell myself that I'm going to lose something rather than gain something. I think that drives me as well.
Yeah, it's the failure, like fear that gets you, you know.
Yeah.
We don't say it that much. Like it's very like taboo to say it on like
Mm.
social media. Like yeah, but it's kind of true. It's the harsh reality that we have this sort of like fear of failure going on.
And like, have you ever had experiences of peer pressure, making you like more stressed, or is it just that standard that you hold yourself to, or do you have like any consideration of what other people might expect of you, especially your family, because obviously we're Asian, so.
Yes, that's very very. I mean, it's part of the Asian experience. I mean, like, what are Asian parents if not expecting you to be either a doctor, engineer, or a lawyer? You know, they have very high standards. But my family is very they're very flexible. They see like how hard I try and how hard I study, and they say like, okay, it doesn't matter if you fail something. Like, we're still proud of you. But that makes me want something more, and that makes me want to like do better. Um, but yeah, but peer pressure. But I've surrounded ever since eighth grade. I've been surrounded with people who are like the same. I would say like the same grade as me. For
Mm-hmm.
example, in eighth grade, we have like separate classes. They separate the A students, B students, C students. I feel like most of you know, like, might know what I'm talking about. So we're all like competitive in that same little classroom, like the 70 of us, like, you know, like pushing us, like each other down. But there is definitely a role in peer pressure, but I don't take like, even though my friends are achieving higher, I don't feel motivated. I feel like it's just the my family's, well, not my family's expectation. It's just the fear of failure that gets you. I mean, if my friends are like going out every single day, I don't feel like I'm gonna go out every single day because just my friends are going out. I don't think I'm affected by peer pressure that much. What about you? Are you affected by peer pressure?
It comes in sometimes, but I have to remind myself that I am doing this because I want to see the best version of me, not because I want to be better than other people. And also, I think it's quite toxic to be, you know, doing something very difficult just because you want to outcompete someone who you won't even know like 10 years later down the line. So,
That's very true.
yeah,
That's very true.
in terms of mental health, also, like, just don't consider peer pressure. Like, everybody can
Yeah,
do better than me. I just need to meet my own expectations, and that's good enough. And that's enough, I think, for me.
that's a very good mindset. Yeah, it shows like a lot of your personality. I feel like you shouldn't compare yourself to others, even in
Mm,
education. I feel like that's very
mm.
important. Yeah.
Okay, so far we've been talking about you as a student, but now let's talk about you as a teacher, because you were my teacher.
Oh,
Yeah, because you were my teacher, and yeah, honestly, I think you are an excellent teacher. So, what about you?
oh, that's very sweet.
Yeah, your kind of reflection on your teaching career and how has teaching shaped you as a person, and your worldview, let's just say.
Oh, that's very sweet. Um, I began teaching, well, because I remember taking EFL for the first time, and I had teachers, and they were very lovely, but there were some questions that like went unanswered.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I like to know some particular thing, and they have, well, not because they have no answers. It's just because uh well, it was very hard because we were the first batch and I had no one. I wish I had some sort of like older sister or older brother telling me what to do, this figure like that I could ask everything for. And for EF, I remember, just because of my passion, that it kept me going, but otherwise I know that I would have dropped it because it's very complicated in the way that they mark things and whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
there were things that I would like to know. So when I finished my IGCSEs, I realized like, oh man, like I don't want like any other like students
Mm-hmm.
or younger or my brothers or sisters like feeling very lost, because the fear of like, it's the feeling of really being lost like really gets you, and it gets you really demotivated. So I was like, okay, if I could show them what to do and what not to do in like particular subjects, that would be very rewarding for me and for them, right? And I want my students to be the best version of them that they could, right? And And I do see that. And sometimes when I'm like teaching class, even you, Ellen, you send me like papers, I give you
Yes.
feedback, and then you like take positively from it and send me like more and more papers. And I could see your improvement, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes me very happy as a teacher, as in like I could see these students improving because, well, not because of me, but because I paved the way.
Mm,
And
right.
they're very like one step closer to their full potential. And that's what makes like teaching so fulfilling.
Yeah.
And I've never talked to anyone about this yet, but yeah, I love teaching. And one thing that I find my students is that I'm very like scientific. So I think every person is kind of the same. They either have the same genetics, like XX chromosome, XY chromosome. They're very genetically built similar. But what I didn't realize is that their minds are very like wired differently. So for example, I'll be teaching like compare contrast, and some students make a mistake that I've never seen before. It's like, oh my god, like how, like, and then I have to come up with solutions to correct it. It's kind
Mm,
of like a math problem. You know how
mm,
to deal with it, but it's just like not the same like from the ones before, and I have to come up with solutions for it.
mm,
And I feel like, yeah, teaching is not boring, and it's the constant surprise that your students comes up with, and the rewarding feeling of, yeah, seeing them achieve their dreams. um yeah, so teaching is very special to me, and I hope I can continue doing it in the future. What about you, Ellen? You've started teaching.
yes, I've
How
just
has your
started
experience
teaching.
been so far?
It's like, I don't know if you know about the Feynman technique. Have you ever heard of that before?
I've vaguely heard of it, but I've
Yeah, so
never
it
like.
basically it's like you learn something and you teach someone about that. That's the
Oh,
Feynman.
yes, yes, yes.
And I used to think that that technique was just so overrated, but now that I began teaching students, I've realized that I'm not as good as I thought I was on some topics, because when you're explaining it to someone, it just reveals every little knowledge gap in your like library of knowledge, and it makes you more aware of the mistakes that you could be making. So that's the number one lesson that I've learned from teaching so far. And because you said that, right? The fact that you are teaching because you want students to be better, to have a better experience, or to learn better than you were when you were a student. I think that's also an
Yeah.
important part of my attitude to teaching. And as you know, like I have the YouTube channel now, and I'm teaching on the YouTube channel, which I think
Yeah.
is
Which is amazing, by
yeah,
the way.
it's amazing. But like the lessons that I've made so far are like the lessons that I wish I could have learned more easily. And the three videos that I've uploaded like up to this point are like the most difficult parts of the exams that I took. And the mindset when I make these lessons is like, okay, just think of yourself as the student and try to fix the mistakes that you made when you were in that position. So I think the fact that you mentioned that, I think that's a lovely point.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's, I don't know where ChatGPT was when I was doing my IGCs. I mean, I'm pretty sure it existed, but no one was like really using it.
Yeah.
So I didn't have anyone to ask for it. And I remember feeling really down. I'm like, okay, I hope nobody like goes through this ever again, you know? So yeah, it's very rewarding though, teaching is, and it's very good that you're like doing YouTube channels to,
Mm.
help students with this.
Yeah, but what about the lessons that you've learned as you've progressed in your teaching career? You know, like the mistakes that you've made that you might, be able to share with me, because I don't want to be making those same mistakes. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I mean, yeah, I realize some like s- sometimes when I'm teaching EFL, like I can also feel myself like, well, getting better, as in like I'm more knowledgeable than I was previously before, because I remember oh, this might be very EFL oriented because I teach EFL. I'm not sure if this applies for other subjects as well, but in my experience, um, when I was doing EFL, I had no idea how to write compare contrast.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of models, but I wasn't receiving really well to. I wasn't responding really well to them, and so as a result, at in the exam, I got really like unsatisfying like score for it. But then as I was teaching, I I noticed that okay, there were a lot of resources out there that I actually didn't come across.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh damn, if I had these resources sooner,
Mm.
I could have done well. But but yeah, there's some areas that like you realize that you're not really good in when once you explain it to to your students. The favorite technique really works well. But yeah, compare contrast was the section that I realized when I didn't know what I really needed to know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should have like a full 1 hour episode on just EFO, you and me. That would be really cool.
Okay. Sure. That'd be nice as well.
Yeah. But to end this episode, I want to end it on a very, I think, a question that will be useful for students who are doing their IGCSE or really any kind of competitive exam. So, what is your number one piece of advice for anyone who is doing some kind of difficult exam?
Oh, okay. uh, like I've mentioned a bit earlier, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and like we both mentioned, you're doing this for yourself. You're doing this so that you could get more opportunities in the future, and it's a very rewarding experience. And we promise you that. And along the way, I feel like you shouldn't be very pessimistic,
Mm.
because even when you're doing IGCSEs, even if you're taking other classes, there's a lot of new people that you'll meet, new experiences, right? New connections with teachers. It's always a fun experience if you look at it from a very fun light. There's this. It reminds me of that one meme where two people are sitting on a bus and one guy is
Ah,
just
yes.
looking at like the wall and
Yeah, that's
the
a really
guy
famous
is just
meme.
looking at, yeah, the one guy's looking in the sunset. I mean, there's always like two sides of a coin. There's always the
Mm.
bad side and the good side. So don't try to be pessimistic. Just enjoy the experience. Do the best that you can, and it's always a very rewarding experience in the end. I believe that everyone can do it, actually.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing that students should take away from this podcast. But yeah, that's all that we have time for today. Thank you for joining us. I know you might be tired, but you still showed up and you still gave excellent answers. You also asked me some
It's okay.
questions. So it was a very fun, and I also hope it was a very insightful um, interview, I guess. So thank you for joining, and to all the listeners or viewers, thank you guys for joining in for the very first episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to give some feedback because this is the first episode. Leave any thoughts on the guests, the questions, and where you would like to take this podcast in the future. Once again, thank you all for joining, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye. Um, my primary motivation for starting this podcast is that I want to have conversations with the people that I find interesting in, and and I also want to ask them the questions that you otherwise wouldn't be able to ask in like other situations. And it's also like
Yeah.
weird if you just send a message on some like topic like, okay, how do you do your time management stuff, which is why
Yeah.
I'm starting this podcast. And yeah, how do you think about it?
It's it's very insightful though. It's very fun. I'll give you that. Um, but yeah, I feel like, and you're also doing like the primary like teaching. It's all to like give back to students, and I
Mm.
feel like they want to be motivated in these times. Especially, I remember like googling one time like, how do I manage 9 subjects
Yeah,
on the computer. I was crashing out. I was like, what the hell. Like there's no like motivation for me. But I hope students find this insightful, and I'm pretty sure they will. It's a very good
okay.
thing that you're doing, Alan.
So